Once upon a time, in the beautiful city of Asaba, lived two sisters who were as different as day and night. The younger sister Oluchi was beautiful, successful and wealthy, the kind of woman whose perfume announced her arrival before she even entered the room. She walked around with her chin high, like a woman who was allergic to poverty. Her older sister Ogo was the complete opposite, humble, calm and quiet, the type whose presence was hardly noticed, except you were a lover of art, as she spent her spare time painting in her room, a hobby that her younger sister Oluchi mocked and called a waste of time. Oluchi spared no opportunity to let her sister know that painting was a useless talent meant for poor people who have nothing better to do with their lives. Oluchi believed that painting was a complete waste of time. To her, success meant money, cars, wigs, designer shoes and fame, all of which she had. So anytime she saw Ogo holding a paintbrush, she would yell angrily and give her some work to do in the house, saying that poor people like her are poor because of their choices. She even went as far as burning all her sister's art supplies, threatening that the next time she sees her painting in her home, she would kick her into the streets to live amongst her fellow homeless people. So Ogo stopped painting, not because she wanted to, but because fear silenced her passion. Every night, she lay on the small mattress in her room, staring at the ceiling, wondering what crime she had committed against God that made life treat her like a stranger in her own family. She did everything in the house, cooked, cleaned, washed, scrubbed, ironed, fetched water, even repaired Oluchi's wigs when they got tangled. Yet, nothing she did was ever enough. And after all her hard work at home, she still followed Oluchi to her boutique every day as her sales girl, working from morning till night like a prisoner serving a life sentence. Ogo was older, but Oluchi treated her like a stray dog she picked from the market. Sometimes, customers who visited the boutique whispered in hushed tones, "That girl is too gentle. Why is the owner shouting at her like that?" They all swore she was the help and was in no way related to her Madam Oluchi. Little did they know that Ogo and Oluchi shared the same mother and father. They were siblings and many found it hard to believe. Those who did wondered what could have happened to make the younger one act wickedly towards her elder sister. One afternoon, a wealthy woman came to buy a dress for her daughter's graduation. She chose a beautiful gown worth 65,000 naira and insisted on paying with cash. Oluchi prohibited all cash transactions in the boutique as she didn't trust her sister with her money. Ogo, in a bid not to lose the customer, accepted the payment and packed the dress for the customer. However, before she could record the sale, her sister Oluchi marched in with fire in her eyes as she began to yell angrily, "Ogo, where is the money the woman paid?" Ogo froze as she tried to explain herself. "I was about to write it in the sales book," she said to Oluchi, who did not even let her finish before giving her a very hot slap across the face. The customers, staff and passerby all froze in shock as they watched her humiliate her sister in front of them. "You think I don't know that you are about to steal my money? Useless thief! That's why you will always remain poor for the rest of your life." The boutique went silent as the customers all shook their heads in pity, calling Oluchi wicked. Another whispered to her friend, saying that Oluchi had no right to slap her. She too dey do, even if she's a maid. Why slap her like that? But Oluchi did not care. Humiliating Ogo had become entertainment to her. In fact, she ignored the stares and dragged Ogo outside the boutique, making her to kneel in front of everyone. "Kneel down there! Kneel down and raise your hands, you thief!" The sun was blazing hot. The ground was burning as Ogo's eyes filled with tears to see what was happening. She knelt in front of the boutique like a criminal, while people gathered, staring, pointing and whispering. Her heart shattered, not because of the pain or the heat, but because her own younger sister was the one humiliating her in front of the world. Among the people watching was a beautiful woman in her mid-50s. She stepped forward gently as she began to speak. "My dear," she said to Ogo, "stand up. You can't be kneeling in the sun." She said to Ogo, who shook her head and began to cry, "Madam, please, my sister will deal with me if I stand up." The woman's gaze hardened as she began to speak angrily. "That is not how you treat a human being," she said, turning to Oluchi. "Why are you talking to her like that as if she's not your blood?" Oluchi hissed, "Madam, Please mind your business. This girl is a thief. If not for pity, I would have thrown her out since. The woman looked at Ogo again, longer this time, like she could see straight into her soul. What's your name, my dear? She asked softly. Ogo, she whispered. And you are her sister? Ogo nodded shamefully. The woman inhaled deeply as if swallowing anger. She turned to Oluchi and asked sharply, you dragged your own elder sister onto the ground. You slapped her. You called her a thief. And you're not even ashamed of yourself? Oluchi rolled her eyes at her. Madam, I beg, if you're here to buy something, buy. If not, don't disturb my peace. I don't have time to banter words with low lives like you, whose job is to mind other people's businesses, with your cheap clothes that are screaming of poverty. The woman looked right at her and smiled. So, it is poverty that makes someone worthless to you? Oluchi snapped her fingers. Please, poverty is a curse, so, and I don't like associating with it. If my sister had sense, she would not be struggling in life. Ogo lowered her head, trying not to cry again. The woman walked closer to Ogo and took her hand gently. My daughter, don't worry. Very soon all this will be history, she said to Ogo, who she handed her card and told her to come see her tomorrow. Oluchi, filled with rage, snatched the card from her hand and shredded it into pieces. She turned to the strange woman and accused her of being a ritualist who was trying to use her sister for rituals. Oluchi screamed it to the hearing of everyone, who stood there and watched in shock as the woman walked away, trying not to draw any attention to herself. Yet, Oluchi did not care. She turned to Ogo, her eyes burning with wickedness as she began to speak. You see what you've caused? You foolish woman. Enter inside and finish sweeping the store before I set your head on fire. Ogo stood up shakily, wiping her tears as she walked into the shop. Weeks passed and Oluchi continued to rain terror on her sister Ogo. If Ogo mistakenly broke a hanger, she would force her to kneel on bottle tops. If Ogo forgot to switch off the boutique light, Oluchi would pour water on her in front of the other staff. One afternoon, during a major sales promo, the boutique was filled with customers. Ogo accidentally tripped over a mannequin and fell face flat on the floor. Oluchi screamed at her in terror, saying, Look at you, falling like a sack of rice. No wonder nobody wants to marry you. Customers gasped sharply. A young lady tried to help Ogo up, but Oluchi pushed her hand away, warning her to mind the business that pays her. Even other customers in the boutique murmured as they called her wicked for treating her elder sister in such a way. However, Oluchi did not care. She grinned with pride, as though humiliating her sister was a sport that she had mastered. That same week, she accused Ogo of stealing 5,000 naira from her bag. Ogo begged and begged, swearing on her life that she never took the money, but Oluchi slapped her hard across the face. You think I'll let you destroy my business like you destroyed your own life? You poor wretched thing. You are not even ashamed of yourself. I feed you, clothe you, shelter you, and yet you still decided to steal from me? Ogo cried her eyes out. She began to cry out to God, asking why he decided to make her life this painful. She sat there in tears as Oluchi found the money in her pocket. Instead of apologizing, she hissed loudly and walked away as if nothing happened. Ogo sat on the cold tiled floor, tears pouring down her cheeks. The humiliation was too much, too heavy, too deep. But just as she wiped her face with the edge of her dress, a forgotten memory struck her heart like lightning. A memory she had buried so deeply that she hadn't touched in years. Her vision blurred as a different time flashed before her eyes. A time when she was the strong one, when Oluchi was the helpless one. A time when life had forced Ogo to grow up overnight. It was 10 years ago, the day their world collapsed. Their parents died in a terrible accident on their way back from the village, both of them gone in one night. Oluchi was only 16, whilst Ogo was 20. Life hit them so hard that even the neighbors cried for them. Oluchi almost ran mad. She refused to eat, refused to sleep, refused to speak to anyone. She clung to Ogo every minute of the day like a frightened child. Ogo became everything overnight: a mother, a father, a provider, and a protector. But their parents left behind enormous debts that no one warned them about. The landlord threw them out of their house less than a month after the funeral. Ogo had only one option: to drop out of the university. She was in her 300 level studying fine arts. Her dream was to become a great painter, to travel the world to teach art, to live a life filled with colors. But dreams don't pay rent. Dreams don't put food on the table. So one evening, she sat on the hostel step, tears in her eyes, holding the little form she filled to withdraw from school. A lecturer walked by and asked, "Ogo, are you sure about this? You are one of the most talented students I've ever seen." Ogo swallowed her tears. "I don't have a choice, sir. My sister needs me." She signed the form with trembling hands and left the campus with nothing but 2 bags and a broken dream. That same week, she went from shop to shop in Asaba looking for work. No one wanted a half-trained graduate. No one wanted a girl with no money. No one wanted a girl with no experience until she saw an ad for house help needed. She walked straight in and took the job. Ogo cooked, washed, cleaned toilets, ironed, fetched water, scrubbed the floors and endured insult. She slept on the kitchen floor, also that she could send every kobo she earned to Oluchi. Every single month. She never kept a dime. She paid for Oluchi's school fees. She paid for her WAEC, her textbook, her feeding, her clothes, her hair and even her upkeep. One day, her boss gave her her salary and said, "Don't you save money for yourself?" Ogo smiled sadly and revealed to him that she was saving a life. One rainy night, after work, she walked 2 hours under the rain because she couldn't afford transport. She arrived home shaking as she collapsed at the door. Oluchi, who was in her first year at the university at the time, screamed out in fear, praying for her sister not to die. Luckily, she survived and had to miss work for a few days. A week later, she resumed work and realized that her job had been given to another person. Ogo was so heartbroken. She realized that the job that had sustained them for this long was no longer available. She made up her mind to find another, as she needed the money to care for her sister. "Don't worry, Oluchi, I'll find another job and make sure you graduate," she said to Oluchi, who watched her keep to her promise. Ogo worked in so many places to raise the money. She worked in a restaurant, a cleaning agency. She washed clothes for neighbors and even did whatever it took to see Oluchi through school, hoping that one day Oluchi will become somebody in life and maybe, just maybe, take her out of poverty. But Oluchi did the complete opposite when she finally came into wealth. She married a very wealthy man who had 4 wives already. Ogo was against the marriage, saying that Oluchi was selling herself cheap to a man who was old enough to be their father. She begged her sister, cried, knelt and even tried to reason with her. "Oluchi, please now, this man does not love you. He just wants another trophy of a wife. You deserve more." Oluchi snapped at her sharply. "Keep quiet. What do you know about marriage? You that hasn't even dated anyone. Don't you ever in your life talk to me about relationship again." "But he's too old for you, Oluchi. You end up being wife number 5. And so what? At least I'll be a wife. Better a rich man's 5th wife than a poor man's only wife," she hissed as she stormed out angrily, pissed at her sister for saying those words to her. From that day on, Oluchi began to see her sister as an enemy. She moved out of their tiny room in the slum, leaving Ogo behind as she went on to marry her rich husband, who not only set up a business for her, but also bought her a massive house. Oluchi's life transformed overnight. She now had big cars, wore expensive wigs, and only dressed in designer clothes. All the staff ran at her command as Oluchi began to live the life that she had always dreamed of. Oluchi forgot every sacrifice that Ogo had ever made, every tear, every insult that she endured just to pay her school fees. She didn't send money home, she didn't call, she didn't visit, and Ogo, who had spent her entire youth working to give Oluchi a future, was left behind in the slum, struggling to survive. Years later, things became so tough for Ogo. She decided to pay her sister a visit for the very first time, hoping that Oluchi would have compassion towards her and help. However, to her utter dismay, Oluchi made her an offer that she could not refuse. She told her to work in her home as a maid, and in turn, she could stay in her home for as long as she wanted. She looked into Oluchi's eyes, hoping that it was just a joke, hoping that her sister would laugh and say that she was only teasing. But Oluchi's face remained cold. hard and emotionless. "Since you love begging," she said, folding her arms smugly, "this is your chance to be useful to yourself. If you want shelter, then you must work for it," she said to Ogo, who felt something break inside of her. She had nowhere else to go, no relatives, no friends, no savings, no future. So she swallowed her pride and agreed to be the maid of her younger sister. Oluchi smiled, a wicked triumphant smile, as she ordered Ogo to refer to her as Madam. Ogo lowered her eyes in shame as she followed them inside. Her room was not a guest room or even a servant's room. It was the storeroom beside the backyard. Dark, dusty, with a broken fan and old boxes stacked in the corners. Ogo stood there trembling, tears dropping silently onto the dusty floor. That was how Ogo began to work as a maid for her younger sister. As she sat on the cold floor, she remembered all the insults she had endured from her sister. Ogo, in that moment, decided to endure. She prayed to God to restore peace between them, not knowing that something big was about to happen. Weeks later, government officials stormed Oluchi's mansion and boutique. She rushed outside, shocked as the head officer showed her a few documents and began to speak. "Madam, your house and business stand on government water channels. They are illegal structures and will have to be demolished today." Oluchi screamed until her voice cracked. "No, you can't demolish my house. Do you know who my husband is? Do you know who I am?" But the bulldozers did not listen. Her mansion, her symbol of success, crumbled before her eyes. Even her boutique, which was a stone throw from her house, was also reduced to piles of wood and shattered glass. Ogo stood in the corner crying, not from joy, but from heartbreak. Despite everything, she didn't want her sister destroyed. Oluchi collapsed, screaming in agony. Her chest tightened, her breath grew short as she collapsed to the floor unconscious. Ogo rushed her to the hospital as the doctor revealed that her collapse was not just from shock. She had advanced kidney failure and needed a transplant immediately to save her life. Ogo's heart shattered as she thought of what to do. She picked up her sister's phone and called her husband, whose number was not connecting. Ogo could not stand and watch her sister die, so she volunteered to be tested and turned out to be a match. Without wasting any time, she told the doctors to proceed with the surgery. She loved her sister so much, despite all the terrible things that she did to her. Hours later, Oluchi's operation was successful, whilst Ogo died of a cardiac arrest in the theatre. Ogo gave her life to save her sister who never saw her worth, a sister who sacrificed everything for her, including her life. Hours later, Oluchi opened her eyes, expecting to see her sister Ogo standing beside her bed, but Ogo was nowhere to be found. The doctor then revealed to her that her sister did not make it. Those words shattered her more than the collapse of her mansion. For the first time in her life, Oluchi understood what true poverty meant, not the lack of money, but the lack of love. She touched the scar on her side, and every time she did, a fresh wave of tears came flooding down her face. The kidney was the only part of her sister that she had left. Oluchi visited her sister's grave every evening, kneeling on the cold earth as her voice broke in regret. "I never said sorry. I never said thank you. I never loved you the way you loved me." She cried aloud, but it was already too late, as her sister she neglected was nowhere to be seen. Ogo's silent kindness had spoken louder in death than Oluchi's entire life of noise, and Oluchi spent the rest of her days carrying the heaviest burden a human heart can bear. Regret, the kind that wakes you up at night and reminds you of the love you destroyed with your own hands. The lesson to be learned from this story is that we never truly know the value of the people in our lives until it is too late. Pride can destroy what love has built, and wickedness always returns to the one who sows it. Ogo gave everything, her dreams, her youth, her strength, and even her life, just to see her sister live, but Oluchi only learned the meaning of family after losing the only person who ever loved her completely. Cherish the people God puts in your life whilst they are still alive, because tomorrow might be too late. Money is not everything, so be wise in everything you do. Treat people kindly and always be compassionate towards others. Kindness costs nothing, but regret is the most expensive debt a human heart can owe. I hope you enjoy.